All right, let's getting into survey design, survey methodology. And once again, survey, if you collect the data by survey, and it's very likely to be a what? Non-experimental research, right? But be careful. Survey not automatically becomes non-experimental research. Let me tell you why. Before intervention, you create the experimental scenario. Before intervention, you survey. After intervention, and then you survey it again, pre-test, post-test, but you use data collection method as a survey. But still, and then now because you do the intervention and you randomly assign subject into two groups, and then after assign, you surveyed, right? In that case, the survey research becomes what? Experimental research. So don't call survey is only for the non-experimental research. I know it's very popular as a non-experimental research, but you can classify survey methodology as always for non-experimental research. That's too not professional, right? Survey is data collection method, right? So because the survey need to be well designed to produce quality data. So the whole idea of the data collection method is of how to produce quality information, quality data. Otherwise, your survey, test, assessment sucks, and then your data sucks, right? So garbage in, garbage out, because you had a beautiful research question and analysis techniques, but your data is horrible because of your survey design and assessment design is horrible, right? So be careful. And overall research validity is imperative to quality of data. Quality of the data is what seriously depends on how you design assessment. So assessment quality is one of the very important part of overall research quality, right? Again, we got a like master degree and graduate certificate on data analytics, right? So data analytic, we designing those assessment system and analyzing those assessment data as well, right? So planning, this is not a research, this is survey design, planning survey, applications and developing, collecting, analyzing, concluding, blah, 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 very similar to research. Um, process, right? All right. Questionnaire. Sometimes we call it as a survey decomposed into many subcomponent. Subcomponent, and we call it as a questionnaires or item construction guide, right? Again, typical, directly related to research problem. Don't ask something else. If you start to asking other things and another some non-irrelevant piece of information coming into your survey data, which is bias, which is not valid, right? If you had a like what unclear, ambiguous, right? Try to clear as much as you could. Otherwise, what you creating another source of variation, which is errors coming in. So you make your data is less reliable because too many. Your precision is what reliability is dropped, right? No misleading, no leading questions, and has you have to be mindful for the social desirability, right? It should be ethic. Social ethic is very important. Avoid overlay personal, obscure information. Don't be too subjective, right? It works for some people, didn't work out with the other people, right? And it should be short and simple. Why? Because of the simplicity give you clarity sometimes. If you have a too long and people cognitively challenging to process that piece of information, and then also what? It's a very what? People not responding. Right? That's it. Response option should be exhaustive and fit context, and then avoid the double negatives. And those things are typical. A guideline to in even any writing you should have clearly describing those things and gathering data. This is just very typical guideline, right? Item format, all right. selected response and forced choice. So multiple choice, whether option to choice, selected response, and then there's a two different way of collecting data nowadays, and especially survey. Why? Because data collection method is serious, even student achievement, and then we need to. It's more like we focus on what nowadays. What this paper pencil. Are you with me? So because of paper pencil survey, they have to read. After they read, either they select or write. So we limited to gathering information about what they think, how they do, because we heavily rely on paper pencil assessment. Nowadays, it's different. So assessment becomes what? Okay, let them do. We analyzing what we measure their like a lot of different type of sensor. I call it as a sensor. Heartbeat, right? Then eye movement, right? And then they can say it, and then we can, if even we had a CCTV, what happened? Traditionally, somebody need to watch that CCTV and need to code what's going on inside of that room, right? And welcome to 21st century. Computer coding. Are they smiling? Are they talking? Are they engaging? Right? Just the video analytic technique is so advanced. So even you talking each other and computer ident machine understand who's the leader of this conversation, who's denier of this conversation. Machine can understand it. So if you really think who understanding who is a real leader and conversation, right? And the computer can do it by audio file. Seriously, audio file, video file, they can code those things, right? So again, selected response and open-ended writing questions, and we need to get the data from that kind of method only when we are stuck on to paper pencil assessment. Nowadays, I'm sorry, we can get rid of those things, those boundaries, right? And then conduct pilot run as well, because always otherwise you think it's okay, but maybe very very not okay if you after you do the empirical test. But this pilot run is what very expensive. And especially if your question item is very cognitive achievement, what happened if you don't do pilot run and you cannot validate with those empirical data? If you do it, what happened for your final exam? I want to develop good final exam. I want to pilot test those final exam before your final exam. Doing it, test the security issue, right? Memory effects, right? So those things are concerns related to having those pilot tests. All right, response rate and quality. Um, Response rate is what? If you reaching out, how many people actually turning back? Whether that is what completed or not, how many people not even saying it. For some reason, people just not respond back to you, right? That is a percentage. Response quality is in this book defined as how many survey when the thing is was completed. Sometimes even though they turning into you, it's not completed, partially completed, or it's nearly empty, right? Or they have to stop at certain point, which is incomplete. You can see the systematic incomplete portion. So again, completeness of response received. Out of the response received, and how many things was the percentage of completeness. We call. I mean, this book describe it as what response quality.
This is actually for one of the homeworks I was doing an interesting study where they also, I don't know if it's called default, but they looked and if the person just said
Mhm.
that how that influenced, like they deleted those responses because
Absolutely. Sometimes,
that was not
yeah,
valuable.
sure. Sometimes we talk about those things, quality of responses, and then that person in that case we decide to have internal rule, treat them as a missing, because otherwise those very very contaminated response coming in, we're jeopardizing our analysis because there's no way A, B, 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 B type of thing. But there's a lot of person's behavior. Okay, I will do it. I will decide to number three. I want to marking everything as number three, and that's the worst that they're not doing it. Worse than they're not doing it, right? And not even responding it, right? Strategy of increasing response rate. Response rate means how much of your turnover should be what clearly worded and everything professional looking good. It looks good, right? And quality, more external quality should be important. Obviously, gratitude, great, and incentive, right? And provide realistic time estimate and deadline, and when is deadline, and please do, and make them schedule, right? And even though somebody like to help you, but you know and then I don't have time to do it, I really want to help you, I don't have time to do it, right? That kind of response you should able to eliminate. Consider timing of distribution and collection, right? It takes a lot of time to reaching out to those survey to people and collect back to you. And also follow up contacts. Yeah, remind them, right? And instead of spamming and annoying them, but if you have a clever way of reminding, that's great because that one really impact onto response rate itself, right? And nowadays computer doing for you, right? Handling non-response. How if people um, do it, right? And then you just this is one of the biggest thing. If you start to ask sensitive, how much you make it, right? What's yours, like a particular some personal question, they don't want to tell you, and then they just decide to not to turn everything, right? I don't want to tell you, not only item level, but also what overall assessment level, right? So in that case, if you treat those missing non-response as a random, that's a serious problem. If you start to ask, right? Oh, what's your relationship with your partner? How good your relationship with your partner? And group of people not good at relationship. You know what? It just feel bad to me to answering all those things. So they stop responding to them. But if you are reasonable good relationship with your partner, yeah, why not? I'm good. I'm very positive. I'm happy. All of a sudden, your data is what biased toward whom? Happy person, right? It's not representative anymore. Why? Because your question at some point, what forced not to answer that question. So how much money you make it, right? If you are making reasonable money, yes, I will say it. But if you make very poor money, why do I have to tell my poorness to other people? And if you are making really good money for other reason, they would like to hire their income. They don't want to be why do I have to tell them everything to other people? That's sensitive because there's a potential risk, right? We train to not to tell too much, especially sensitive area, right? Personal area, right? So that's very important. So that's the reason why you need to identify why they didn't respond. It's very good study. Interview sample with non-respondents. If you really want to be a thoughtful, not everybody. Someone who decide to not to respond, and you ask them why you decide to not to do it. Timing issue, any some emotional issue, psychological issue, some physical issue, why you decide to not to do it, right? It become you can analyze on those things too. You can guess the other non-responsive respondent can behave same way, right? It's okay. Be thoughtful, not just treat them. Oh, this is random. I don't know. They didn't. They didn't respond to it. You are responsible to someone who not respond. Incomplete. Incomplete is what sometimes you know there is a pattern incomplete, it's okay. But like a chunk of data, it's like there's a systematic pattern of the incomplete or missing that causes some problem. Certain items, a lot of missing, that's a problem. Certain, some people had a chunk of incomplete, like a later part. They running out of time. If you analyzing that way, and then what? Some achievement test. Their ability highly related to what? How much of the day able to complete, right? So if you just push forward that treat them as a randomly missing, no, it's related to their ability. Right? They spend too much time with the earlier item, and then they too less time, even though they are very good at earlier part, but they spend more time on earlier part, right? Dishonest response, lots of reason. They just do 3 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. Dishonesty is something is torturing. It's worse than no response. Some response is worse than no response, right? So there is a reason why to do it, right? And tendency to agree with item. A lot of people, yeah, because they want to feel good. A lot of people choose neutral. Even though they disagree, they tend to choose neutral because it's complications going on. They should endorse the negative way, but they don't know what to do. But emotionally, they don't want to say negative because people we are educated don't be negative, right? So it tends to bias to more positive. Agree on something. Do you agree? Yeah, kind of agree. Strongly agree. Even the kind of agree may represent sort of not agree. Partially agree means what? Like, we treat our kids like that. Or you can't say no. You make some excuse, right? And be nice, right? Those things are start to represent it into when you respond. Even they say no. They should able to say no instead of sort of agree or partially agree, right? The meaning is very different issue, right? Don't forget, people had a tendency to agree with item all the time. Handling missing data, and you have to report how many missing overall, and if you can analyze, further analysis of missing is very important. Yeah, female more missing, male or more missing, Asian more missing, that kind of thoughtful analysis needed. Not like, oh yeah, I did it, 30% missing. That's not enough. So if you got a data and you do your best to missing list analysis, try to understand how to dealing with those missing lists. Sometimes you delete, which is list wise is what? If any missing, you delete that subject. And pairwise, you only what? The delete that particular variable of your interest relationship. Right. So you wanna do A and B, right? You got a three variable A, B, C. When you analyze in correlation A and B, it doesn't matter you have a missing in C, right? But in list-wise deletion, because of C had a missing, you just deleted that particular subject entirely, right? List-wise is very dangerous. Pairwise is a little bit safe. And imputation is not deleting. Imputation is what? You impute some number, hypothetical, there's some plausible number into that missing point, right? It's a fancy. Whoa, you impute means and another like EM algorithm, right? Like maximum likelihood method to impute. Computer suggests some number to what it looks like a very fancy, but be careful. That require a lot of assumptions, right? And statistical method is very dandy. You can do it, but missing is missing. I'd rather you analyzing missing thoroughly instead of just purchasing software, impute some value, you pretend to okay, right? But I recommend you to both. Not like go ahead to impute some missing. Please analyze why you got a missing list on any pattern on missing list. And you have to analyze some pattern of missing list. All right. Online survey. Again, online survey or computerized survey. How about that? Online survey, SurveyMonkey. Listen, I believe this online survey is very, very promising. Let me tell you why. Nowadays, you got paper survey, scan, or just digitalize that one into putting it online. Still selected response and what? Writing, right? Online survey can involve because it's connected to internet. So they can say, they can ask a question if they don't understand, right? And then you can measure their eye movement, right? And then you can measure what? Brain activity in online survey, right? So online, think about connectivity in online. And then think about multiple sensors above and beyond selective response and those things, right? Lots of additional, right, biological data, and you can measure in your online survey. Eventually, online survey is computerized assessment. How about that? Eventually, they will evolving in that way, not like just electronic word file and transform into and paper version, right? So even though we stuck onto what, still read, select, right, currently online survey, but internet assessment. So I will call this assessment on internet, AOI. Assessment on internet will really, really changing the game in future, right? Factors considered with online survey. Again, these things can technology can help those kind of issues, right? I'm not talking about just online, right? Interview, same thing. So we have to have a face to face, right? But online interview, how about that? You can see, you can double check, right? Interview is what, like a human being assessing those things, right? And qualitative, quantitative, you can measure lots of data by interviewing, right? If you connect it to online interview, you can measure additional data than their response. Sometimes computer automatically coding, hey, these persons are very interested into your lecture, Jehua. And there's a software and CCTV in front of computer, and computer automatically capture who's gonna very excited and focus on this class, who's gonna bored and they want to sleep, and then they can instantly providing that aggregated information in here. They read your face recognition techniques and in real time, not like after class. All right, advantages and questionnaires and absolutely you can reduce the non-response and standardize and inclusion. And nowadays, what kind of interview techniques are available? Machine interview. Computers are interview, and if you answer it, and then they can have a follow question if you have a question and machine answer it. The one of the biggest challenge for interview method is what, it's on demand interview. We have to schedule who's gonna interview, right? And as long as interviewee is ready and machines start to interviewing, and then they have a like what, more rule based question generator, right? And then they can have a like adaptively asking questions by those things. So job interview, a lot of people pay a lot of money because that's serious for the company. So they want to have a screening those things to machine based interview. If you want to be an expert and hey, welcome to 21st century, dive in. Why not? You bring up your contents expert into here. So interviewing teachers or the other students and helping and by machine based, right? All those things are cool area in assessment. Okay, question.
What is selection bias on performance by interviews?
Yeah, selection bias is because of it from the non-random, right? You choose one particular groups, right? And either you choose and or they choose, right? Because someone who willing to participate in that study, participate interview, there's a reason. Someone who don't do, there is a reason, right? And it's not a random. if you start to do non-random selection and non-random assignment, right? Even you, someone who agreed to participate your study, it's not random. Why? Some people had a right to, "No, I don't want to participate that study," right? Because you need to random assignment, somebody need to agree to randomly assign first, right? Right? If they decide to not to participate, you can do that random assignment. Even you do the experimental research, right? So selection bias is the nature of the very fundamental problem. Always, there's no way to completely get rid of the selection bias. A certain level of selection bias happening, right? Because we cannot force to everybody do it as we designed to do it, right? All right, items, interview items, and conducting interviews, and those guidelines are. You can take a look. This is not that much important. And then we had a beautiful qualitative analysis course, and then they focus on more like interview skill, and not just viewing skill, and then they coding those interview result, right? And ad policy program, even though that's doctoral program, master program in ad policy, need to take recommended to those qualitative analysis course, right? Qualitative analysis course is like they collect data, still empirical data. They testing hypotheses, understanding what's going on sometimes, but their data not necessarily quantifying. Quantifying process causing another problem. So make it as what? Not digitalizing it. Make it as like movie type of thing, right? And how you code. Again, you can measure behavior. You can measure their emotion, right? Um, that kind of thing with more qualitative way, qualitative fashion, and data turns out qualitative data. All right, telephone interview. Again, nowadays, 21st century, online interview, telephone interview, online survey, that that what that boundary is go away. Even no one actually mailing something to respond. They are email them, and email method is very similar to what? Online survey, right? Even when you do online survey, you can add an interview component in online survey, right? And so telephone and online, there's no clear boundary of the you're using internet. All those data and voice over IP is nowadays available. So even you call it, that's they're using what in internet line anyway. So again, that's the reason why I call it in assessment on the internet. It's this new era we are moving into. So we less rely on that paper. People need to read it. Paper media is what we have to write, and we have to draw something, the delivering piece of information, and they have to select and draw, write something to get the data, right? But digitalized, welcome to digital world, and then other form of the data. So you need to be creative. Please, you have to be creative how to get relevant source of the data in digital world. Don't stuck onto the 19th centuries and 1980s, and this is only way they have to do it. Even we are 21st century, we still believe this is assessment and survey. I don't think so. You can simulate a particular scenario. You can measure how they react in thing, and then we are using what VR. Nowadays, interviewers are meeting with the same game, cyberspace. We're shaking hands, and more like colder than two-dimensional. Hello, in front of web camera. You can use a VR to interview, and then you can measure their behavior, how they are moving, and how they are react, and other people, right? So, again, be creative. Future is yours. Source of error, right? I think this is last lecture. Whole idea number one is what? Number one, unbiased. There's don't forget two type of. One is what? Unbiased. Basically, you measure something else than you like to measure in survey, interview, or other things, right? Systematic error, right? Another one is because of this so ambiguous, sometimes it make it unreliable, which is unsystematic at a random error coming in. It depends and depends. Sometimes you systematically get rid of the particular person's response or not receiving amplifying. We call it a bias, right? And in this case is what? Random error is dropping your precision. If you have a less bias, you measure what you measure clearly. We call its accuracy is very high. There's no distortion, systematic distortion. Hey, Jaehwa, your survey is very biased to favor to Korean guys. Your examples are very favorable to Korean guys. That's we call it as a what? Bias. It's and sometimes it make it very unclear to understand everybody, or it's not like ambiguity. So like not consistent. We call it as a what? Precision, right? Reliability, right? So control for those potential source of error, right, is what? Very important. Consistent, clear, accurate, right? And then also what? Nowadays we need to think about what? Multi-dimensional source of data in internet environment. And then you can be winner on data collection in terms of survey. And testing world that we would, even though we are attacking this data collection, assessment data, and data analytic, not only model and collecting process and differently, but still same idea, accurate and more precise data collection. Otherwise, we garbage into our analysis and garbage will be out, right? Thank you so much. These are references, and this is it for this non-experimental research.